Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. You are in for such a treat today. I don't think I've ever laughed as much as I have with this guest. It's Dr. Stephen Lewis. He's back on the show today, and you are going to be in such a good mood after hearing this episode. We touch on a lot of exciting topics like healing the thyroid, removing toxins, nutrifying the body, having more energy and vitality for men, having more testosterone. We even talk about a little bit about mindset, how to break addiction, the importance of minerals. We go over so many wonderful topics. Dr. Stephen Lewis is a holistic health doctor. He's a chiropractor, but he also looks at your body holistically and looks at your life holistically. So he's going to give you today advice that you can take into your life and also share with your friends and family that will benefit you regardless of what you're up against. I want to let you know that during the interview, I mentioned one of my family members who listens to me and who at my advice, started using the magnesium foot soak that my husband and I have been using. And she went from being able to not walk very long distances to be able to walk all the way around a large lake here in Seattle. And so she really has her stamina back and thought it was so cool. So I just wanted to let you know, since I did mention it in the interview, if you're looking for a really high quality magnesium supplement, or even in addition to what you are taking, because I take a liquid mineral that contains magnesium that I absolutely love. I've been taking it for 7 years, along with my liquid vitamins that I take from takeyoursupplements.com. So my liquid minerals and my liquid vitamins, and even also in this episode, I mentioned the minerals that I use in my garden to remineralize the soil. And that too is, you can buy that from takeyoursupplements.com. But in addition to all that, I have found that this magnesium foot soak really works. We have much better sleep. Our 3-year-old son goes to sleep easily now instead of fighting us, and stays asleep for longer. And he seems just happier and more calmer, which is so great. And then, of course, we are also happier and calmer, I'm noticing. So it's a fantastic foot soak. You actually will absorb about 4 grams of magnesium in 40 minutes using this foot soak every day. And that they find that after a month of using it, most people will fully saturate their body, which is really exciting, especially since magnesium deficiency is so rampant. So if you'd like to join me in checking out this foot soak, trying it for yourself for 30 or 60 days like I have been, you can go to livingthegoodlifenaturally.com and use the coupon code LTH. I asked the founder to give my listeners a discount. She was so nice enough to give us a 10% discount. Plus, she also subsidizes the shipping. So she only charges us a fraction of what it costs for her to ship. I believe she just does a flat rate of $8, and then she covers the rest of the expenses for shipping. So definitely get one of their bottles of the magnesium foot soak. And then if you have chronic pain, she has this cream that really works. It's a magnesium cream, and it really works to release tension and decrease that pain in those local areas. So check out those 2 products from her. I'm going to be having her on the show next month. Really excited about that because she's such a wealth of information. Thank you so much for being a listener. Enjoy today's show. I know you will. And if you need a little pick-me-up today, after today's episode, you will definitely feel amazing because I can't believe how much we laughed and enjoyed our conversation in today's interview. So enjoy. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 283. Well, I'm very excited for today's guest. We have back on the show with us Dr. Stephen Lewis. He was all the way back in episode 117, and it was just an amazing show where we talked about chronic adrenal fatigue It's something that a lot of people have and don't know they have until they're like practically bedridden and so exhausted, and caffeine doesn't do anything for them, but they need it even just to feel alive. And then maybe they bump into a doctor like Dr. Lewis, and they finally discover it's chronic adrenal fatigue, and that begins their long and windy journey through holistic medicine where they gain their health back and they see the light. And then they go telling all their friends that, food is medicine and herbs and supplements can really replace, in many instances, drugs. And the pharmaceutical companies hate that. And they hate doctors like Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, we take away from the bottom line.
Right, exactly. And I love doctors that rob from the rich and rob from the rich pharmaceutical companies and give to us. Well, today we're here to talk about another really important subject that also addresses energy, the thyroid. I have had at least a dozen listeners contact me begging to have experts on the show about Hashimoto's, as you know, is a growing concern in many people. It's just sort of out of control. Maybe we could talk about the statistics of and why is it that thyroid issues are becoming more and more common. But here today, you're here to discuss how to heal the thyroid from the various conditions that someone could have. And I'm just really, really excited. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those who didn't listen to episode 117, can you give us just a little synopsis of your bio so we understand your background?
Well, I was trained as a chiropractor, and although I was very successful and saw too many patients like some of us do, I always thought that if you didn't do nutrition, it was not complete. Nerve supply and structure and function is incredibly important in being healthy, but you have to nourish the cells.
Absolutely. And so as a chiropractor, did you always believe in nutrition and focusing on food and supplements, or was there like an aha moment that you had?
No, I've always known that because when I was a little kid, I always noticed that our chiropractor would counsel us on different vitamins and minerals and herbs. And, it frustrated me as a young teenager to read Dear Abby, and she was always pushing drugs, 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 and medical doctors. And I love our medical profession and I respect them greatly. But since America is so unhealthy, there's another piece missing. And I was thinking when I was reading Dear Abby, well, our chiropractor could have fixed that. Our chiropractor could have fixed that. And it's always nerve supply and nutrition. Get out the toxins, get in the nutrients, and your body's smart enough to heal itself. So if you've lost hope, you shouldn't, because there is hope. You just hadn't tried the right avenue.
That one sentence summed up, I think, entire textbooks of how to heal the body. Get out the toxins, bring in the nutrition, right? It's that's an entire field, and that's what you do. Um, let's dive into thyroid. What got you excited about helping people heal their thyroid?
Well, we see so much of it, and Janet says, I wish you'd quit recommending so many other people's books. You need to write your own book. And it's like, yeah, I have the knowledge here, but Janet, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time away from you, and I'd just rather not, because she's like my best friend. We'd pal around 24 hours a day and still like each other. And so I wrote a thyroid book, and I think it was 36 pages. And I said, this is all we need to know in 36 pages, and actually made bestseller on Amazon, which surprised me. But I've read plenty of 200 and 300 page books, and it's just a rehash of the same old thing. I like to boil it down, get out the toxins, put in the nutrients, and, have positive expectations, because your spirit and your mind has a lot to do with what kind of outcome you have.
That is beautifully said. And we're going to make sure that the link to is it 36 page, is it still 36 pages, or have you added any more pages to your book?
No, I'm too lazy. No, well, I said you need to find a medical doctor or a natural medicine doctor, or sometimes both, and let them guide you, because nobody's the same. And what's right for you with Hashimoto's, it may not be right for someone else. It's,
Absolutely.
I don't know, it's called the thyroid sniper, because Janet and this guy, excuse me, they were trying to make the cowboy connection. It's like I couldn't saddle a horse if I had to, but I got a big, ugly, Western looking mustache. And the guy says, well, Dr. Lewis likes guns, so let's just call it the thyroid sniper. He'll get right to the point. And I do.
So the link to your thyroid sniper book is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntrout.com, so that those who have thyroid issues or have friends with thyroid issues can get it. I love that you made it a quick read, and just getting right to the point, boiling it down. I hate it that I have to read like half a book of fluff to finally get to like the two sentences that makes the difference. You just cut out all the fluff. I love it.
Yeah, I like that word fluff. Thank you. That's good. You're very polite.
Right? Well, it's a PG show, so so in all your years, and how many years have you been helping people to do things like heal their thyroid?
Well, I got out of chiropractic college in 1981, and, I was always into nutrition, but probably the last 15 years, we've hit it really hard and heavy on the
Okay.
nutritional side of it.
And in the last 15 years, have you seen an increase in thyroid issues or an increase in Hashimoto's? Is because I hear from other people that, or other statistics, that it's a growing issue.
It's funny that you asked that because, not too many years ago, I would do different podcasts and I'd say, well, some of these books that you read from these so-called experts that say all different conflicting things said that 80 or 90% of all hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's. And I would always say, well, I've really not seen that number to be that high. Maybe it was 25 or 35% in my practice. Well, now the numbers or the percentage has grown. So I don't know if it's because there is a great increase in thyroid issues or just my consciousness has changed and we kind of attract to us what we're very competent at dealing with. But yeah, I think it's growing
Mm-hmm.
for one reason or the other.
Well, autoimmune disease, in and of itself is on the rise when you look at you. I mean, I Googled this the other day because one of my guests said it. I just did not believe him. I flat out said this could not be possible. But Google the top selling drugs in the United States, and four of the five top selling drugs were all related to autoimmune condition. And I thought maybe the top five selling drugs would be pain, pain because of the big opioid epidemic. But really, it's we're getting an entire nation drugged up on suppressing the immune system, which is going to lead to, obviously complications down the road. Now you help people naturally though. How do you help someone with a thyroid condition not need drugs?
Well, yeah, again, I try to boil it down. It's like the problem is in America, our government subsidizes wheat, soy, and corn. So it's a cheap commodity. And we fertilize this stuff with, the NPK, the so-called fast food. We're
Mm-hmm.
growing our food with fast food. And what happens really is these plants say, oh, I have all this, it's fast food, I have all this extra energy, I have to create more protein in this plant. And people say, well, more protein's better. That's how short sighted we are. The protein that's increasing in these plants is called gluten. And
Mm-hmm.
we have 4 to 40 times more gluten in our wheat than we did back in the 1970s. And not to say it was good back then. And so that's where a lot of this autoimmune diseases are coming from. And then you get the leaky gut syndrome. And, there are products that are very, very good to help your body heal leaky gut. And one of the products we use is a bovine derived immunoglobulin. Back when the medical profession had it, it was somewhere around $400 to $1,200 per month.
Mm.
Now this company got it and says, well, we can give them the same thing and it sells for around 70 something dollars per month, but it's the exact same thing that they used to sell for 4 to 1200. And what it does, it tightens those leaky gut gaps so
Mm-hmm.
that you don't get the foreign proteins and the toxins and the microorganisms. But once you heal your gut, guess what else gets well? Your brain does. So you get better nerve signals to the thyroid. And it's just a cyclical thing that you
Mm.
have to break the cycle everywhere you can.
It's fascinating. So your approach to thyroid, whether it's hypothyroid or hyperthyroid or Hashimoto's, if they have any thyroid imbalance or disease, you want to go in and heal the gut first and foremost.
I think gut is always part of the equation. Gut and inflammation, I think, is always in the equation. So yeah, I fix the gut,
Do you
and you can give the thyroid things it needs to work with, but fix the gut first.
do you believe that 100% of the population would benefit from going gluten free?
Um, Close. Maybe not 100%, but close. Yes.
How would someone know that they're okay eating gluten? Because so many people, I mean, it's leaky gut's not something you feel like a rat or can see like a rash. It's
Correct.
damage on the inside and it happens slowly and steadily, and all of a sudden then something snaps. Like then you have Hashimoto's, but that damage has been happening for months or years.
I think about 99.9% of the time that's correct, but you have a few people, there's always an exception, it seems. And again, it may be something you don't really notice, but it is going on. But some people do have good digestive enzymes. Now, it's a very small amount of people that do. Some people do have a GI tract full of proper probiotics. I think that's rare, but
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm a big fan. I was a fan of Atkins years ago. So the Atkins Paleo Primal Keto, I'm a big fan of that type of diet. Just throw the grains away.
Mm-hmm. And someone could be a vegan and throw the grains away. They don't have to eat Atkins necessarily or paleo, but they could live a lifestyle where there's no grains. And
Yes.
so we're taking away grains. What other foods should we remove or really limit that you see cause either thyroid issues or gut issues or both?
Well, I think the hidden toxins like MSG that they can say, well, it's a natural flavoring and not call it MSG. We've known MSG is horrifically toxic, at least back in the 1970s, but it's still in our food. And even in some of the vitamins and drugs, you have cancer causing dyes. Why do you care what your vitamin or drug, whether it's red or blue? Why would you put a cancer causing dye in that? So the artificial things, I think the best way to heal people is change their mental perception because we perceive things as food that's not really food. Just because you can eat it doesn't mean it's really a food that's going to nourish and drive your body toward better health.
Mm.
Perception.
Help us to change our perception. I know a lot of our listeners are very open and maybe have already changed their perception, and there might be some that are new and to this journey and they haven't. So speak to those who need to mentally change their perception. Give us the talk. Give us the come to Jesus talk.
Well, I'm really bad about being blunt, and I try to be very polite. And certainly, my heart is very pure in trying to help people. But I had a guy the other day says, "Well," and he was huge, and he was, really had some mental problems based on his bad gut. He says, "But can I just cheat and eat this and this and this?" And I looked at him and I said, "You've got a beautiful wife and three kids. Is it okay if you cheat on her a little bit?" And I said, when you cheat in your diet, you're robbing them of you being the man that you could be. And I didn't mean to be impolite. His wife said she didn't think I was. She was glad I was trying to motivate him. So, forget the things that's in a box. Forget the things that's in a bag that has, all these ingredients that sound like chemicals. If it has all that, don't do it.
Got it. Because it's so funny how we'll cheat on ourselves with food.
Exactly.
We were cheating on ourselves, but obviously we're not going to cheat on our spouse, or cheat, I don't know, on taxes or whatever cheat you wouldn't do.
Right.
Or cheat, paying the waitress, like you wouldn't steal a tip off of someone else's table, like steal the waitress's tip, just though that kind of cheating, like, but we're totally fine with poisoning ourselves, right? With alcohol or cigarettes or fast food or whatever, because there's not immediate there's no immediate I mean, yeah, we might have a hangover the next day, but it's not like we're going to get cancer the next day because we we ate one meal, but it really does add up.
You know, um, I think that's a very good point. I think one of the missing pieces is we don't love ourselves enough to accept the good things. The universe has incredible things for us, but most of us don't love ourselves enough to accept it. And I love it when I go to these relicensing seminars and, have these 4 hours of, oh, don't hug your patients and don't do this and don't do that. So I come home and I hug more patients because that validates them as a human being and lets them know that they're worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to love them enough until they can love themselves. And, uh, I don't know. We got this new secretary that's absolutely phenomenal, and she's incredible. And she was full of fear. And I've got this picture of a horse, and it says, "For God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but one of sound mind, love." Da 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 da. And I'd say, if God didn't give you that spirit of fear, where's it coming from? And that was all it took. And she's incredible now. She's not full of fear. So, if it's full of fear, that's usually out of your GI tract and a malfunctioning thyroid anyway. So, we can definitely, with nutrition, make that better.
Why is it that when we heal our gut, all of a sudden our emotional state changes? People report they're no longer have depression, no longer have anxiety. Why is it that healing the gut would have us live a more fulfilled life?
Well, because the neurotransmitters that make us happy, I call them the happy hormones, like, for example, serotonin, 95% of it starts in the GI tract. And so when you have yeast and bad bacteria, they steal your neurotransmitters, and then the toxins they put out make you have less of the neurotransmitters. Like the people that don't have hope usually need GABA, and the people that just aren't satisfied need serotonin, and then there's several other neurotransmitters. So it's the probiotics actually do a lot to heal the gut and to help take the load off the thyroid. So I'm a big fan of probiotics.
Really take the load off the thyroid. So what about fermented foods? I've heard that eating a variety and rotating a variety of fermented foods can be sometimes even more powerful than taking a supplement form of probiotics. Has that been your experience?
I think that can be. Some people just ferment foods and just whatever's in the air is what they ferment their foods with. I'm not a big fan of that, but it can be useful. Back in the old days, we used to get our probiotics, because we were digging in the dirt and, we'd get it off our fruits and vegetables. And now there's so much paranoia about, oh my God, these bacteria are just specifically lab derived so that they can make it through the harsh stomach environment. It's like, well, that wasn't an issue 100 years ago. If these bacteria are that fragile, are they really going to set up shop in your small intestine and colon? They're not that fragile. So get it out of the soil. And of course, you can't get the microorganisms out of the soil if it's been fertilized with that NPK. The microbial activity there is pretty much zero. But that's why there's a resurgence in organic farmers, and I'm so pleased. I treat so many people that have organic farms that say, even though I eat organic, I feel so incredible taking the supplements. And then when they quit the supplements, they still feel bad. And I said, well, organic is incredible thing to do because you're eating the variety of fruits and vegetables, but you still don't know if it's 1 part per million or 16,000 parts per million of manganese or molybdenum or magnesium,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Mm-hmm. The soil, we don't know whether there's enough selenium in that soil, whether there's enough zinc or copper or tin or all these trace elements and minerals that our body needs. There's the major minerals like calcium and magnesium, and we just don't know if that soil has enough for that vegetable, even though it's organic. If you Google selenium map, farming or agriculture, there's a map that comes up that you can see they tested all the agricultural soil across the United States. And I'll see if I can find it and I'll put it in the show notes of the episode because it looks really interesting. And you see that selenium isn't, and that's just one of the 77 trace minerals we could get from our food. And it's not dispersed evenly. It's dispersed in pockets, Like if you peel an orange and you see the little like veins across the orange, the minerals are in veins across the earth and the earth's
Right.
crust. And
Hmm.
so, like you're saying, even though you're treating patients that are organic farmers and they're eating the food they grew, that food might be void of 60 or 15 or whatever minerals. And so what you're saying, taking a supplement now would help, restore all of their nutrient tanks in their body, and kind of bring it all back into balance. That makes complete sense. What about iodine?
Well, since we don't eat as much seafood, the further inland we go, even though it's shipped, that's why there's such a low instance of thyroid problems, and even breast cancer instance is real low in Japan because they eat a lot of seaweed, which is full of iodine. So, and I don't think the iodized salt is enough. I'm really a big fan of the Celtic sea salt or the Himalayan sea salt because, like you say, it has a better profile of the very small minerals that we need more of. But that's why it's very important, I think, to supplement with iodine. Although, some of the experts, the ones that write the books, say never give a Hashimoto's patient iodine. Other people say you can give them a little bit. And, you kind of have to watch what you do. You have to watch the patient as an individual. And then there's, one expert that says, oh, you can give them 50 to 100 milligrams of iodine, where other people say 125 micrograms. That's a huge, huge difference. The
Mm-hmm.
point is you have to be able to treat that patient as an individual. It's not a cookie cutter approach by any means.
Back in the day, they used to give iodine to people who had hypo or hyper. They just gave it. If you had any thyroid issue, they'd give it to you. But even 50 years ago, everyone used iodine on a regular basis. It was how, you cleaned wounds. Just it was kind of more commonly used. And now it's rare that you see someone, a mother slathering iodine on a child if they have a cut, whereas that you used to see that.
That's a good point. You're talking 50 years ago, and I love books, and I have some very antique medical books. And there's a book that said, and it's over 100 years old. It said that, well, we subsidize or fortify our flour with iodine. Now, what do we do with it now? We fortify it with bromine, and
Mm.
bromine takes the place of iodine. And even in that book talking about flour being fortified with iodine, it says flour is absolutely devastating to a diabetic. And that's over 100 years old, but they're still serving Krispy Kreme donuts at the American Diabetic Association meetings.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's if you go to the American Diabetes Association website, that diet that they promote is to maintain and keep having diabetes. It is not to cure diabetes, and which is
Yeah.
type 2 is totally curable. I did it. I did it with
Yes.
with supplements and food and lifestyle changes, and it's like the easiest thing out of all the health issues I resolved. Diabetes was like the easiest thing to resolve. It is so easy, and you're right. It's just isn't it just maddening and sickening that we our taxpayer dollars go towards an association like the American Heart Association or the this that goes towards these the public information, right, on health, and the public information how the US government tells us how to eat, and there's like the plate, right? It used to be the pyramid, now it's the plate, and we're paying our tax
Right.
dollars is going to subsidize these foods like the crops, right?
Right.
And subsidize the crops to feed more cattle or to feed more humans, but and then we're paying apparently nutritionists to tell us how to eat, and yet it's a diet that promotes disease. What is up with that?
Well, I was telling a story one time at a meeting. It's kind of a class, and people always love their drugs. I'm taking 1.25 milligrams of this and this, and they're just thrilled with their drugs. And they said, but I was diagnosed, and they wear it like a badge of courage.
Mm,
And I said, well, here's how much sense that makes. Because in 1980, America gave more drugs, more surgery, more diagnostic tests than any nation on the face of the earth. And again, I very much respect our medical profession in some areas. But in 2000, 20 years later, we had increased our diagnostic tests, we had increased our surgeries, and we quadrupled the amount of drugs given to the average person. So in 20 years, we quadrupled the amount of drugs. So we went from number 17 in overall health in 1980 to number 37 in overall health in 2000. Well, now we're at about number 57 in overall health, according to the World Health Organization and the Commonwealth Fund. So it's not my opinion, that's fact.
So we're out of all the nations on the planet, we're paying the most amount of
Hmm.
money for medical care, right? And for quote unquote health care, right? Which is disease management.
Yes.
And then on top of that, our taxes are going towards telling us how to basically maintain disease. And our taxes are going to subsidize grains and crops that are further, contributing to our disease.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we have this juggernaut of lobbying to keep everything in place and also keep all the school children, the public school children, eating absolute junk food. Like there's McDonald's in some of these public schools. They're being served McDonald's. And in fact, our children in America in the public schools are fed less nutrition and more junk food than even people in prison. When you look at how they're fed, and it's just, I mean, they're not even fed very well either. But it's this, really backwards. Like there's no focus on health in our government. No focus on true health, I should say, true health that reverses
Right.
disease and that fosters well being. And you've been fighting against this, the whole time. What can you share some stories of success of how you have helped people to get off of drugs and to totally change their life, like do a whole 180 with their life, emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually, help them to get to the root cause and especially heal what they thought they'd have for the rest of their life, or at least their MD said to them, "You're gonna have Hashimoto's for the rest of your life," and you said,
Oh yeah, there are a lot of success stories, and again, it goes back to the patient put in the work. I love it when they come give me all this great, grand, and glorious credit, and I said, it's not mine. I'm just a good coach, and God healed you. But one person one time, she had some thyroid issues, and she had a screaming baby. And of course, I adjusted the baby, and it got better immediately because its neck was messed up. But I was dealing also with the thyroid and the neurotransmitters. And she's a real sweet lady. And she called me a few weeks later, and this was after she took enough supplements to have made a difference. And she called me and she said, "You saved my life." And I said, "Well, I appreciate it, but you did the work." She says, "You really don't understand." She said, "After the last visit, I'd lost so much hope. And on the last visit, you gave me everything I needed to get my life back. And I was literally going to put my Smith& and Wesson in my mouth and shoot myself."
"Mm,
And it's like, oh, wow, I make a bigger impact sometimes than I think. But, I
mm-hmm.
try not to take a lot of credit. I just, I think I can give you a good roadmap to health. But there are people that have reversed their Hashimoto's, and there's people that have been down and depressed and overweight for years and years and years. And if they're willing to put the time and the effort into it, you talked about reversing diabetes. Well, disease is just adaptive physiology. Your body's adapted to something that's missing. So if you give it what's missing, it will adapt back to a healthier, happier, more energetic place. Your body's always trying to go toward good. So um, again, we had a phone call a couple hours ago, and the guy was telling Janet, he's from New Mexico. He said, "Well, this is better, this is better, this is better. Oh, my prostate is better. Oh, I'm not going to have to get that prostate surgery. And please don't ever retire." It's like, well, we're going on the road with an RV, but as long as we have internet and a cell phone, we can still do our job. Um, we fortunately can do lab in 47 states, and that can be emailed to us, and we can do it out of the RV. So yeah, it's just
Cool."
really, really rewarding for
Mm-hmm.
Janet and me. But And he told Janet, says, I hear Dr. Lewis on these podcasts, and he's just so brilliant. And it's like, no, I'm really a very slow thinker. And he said, but he downplays his intelligence. It's like, well, I know people a lot smarter than me. Ashley James is one of them, but, we all work together. Yeah, there's been so many success stories. Well, for example, one lady said, my doctor says I can never get pregnant again. It's like, oh, okay. And we did lab, and I said, well, you need to take this, 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 and this. And she called me. This is a lady out of Houston. That's 4 hours away from me. And she says, Dr. Lewis, I'm pregnant. And I said, well, congratulations. She says, no, you don't understand. I'm surprised. And I said, well, wait a minute. Was that not our goal? She said, yeah, but I didn't think you could pull it off. And we've got young ladies that have had babies after they've been told you cannot have babies. And, some do, some don't. But it can be a progesterone, estrogen, poor ratio, an overload of estrogens, and it can be the 5-MTHF problem. And Google that. That's really a pretty common problem, the 5-MTHF problem. And you can get your genetics tested relatively inexpensively. I've got one of those genetic SNPs for the 5-MTHF, and when I take the proper supplement, Janet knows when I feel good and when I've taken the supplement. And she says, when you didn't take that particular supplement, you're not happy. I said, I'm always happy. She says, you're not as happy. And so the lab reveals so much and gives you a roadmap to what you should do. And I see so many people that say have their neutrophils and lymphocytes upside down, and that's types of white blood cells. And when they go upside down, you're in an autoimmune challenge. And I've seen that reverse so many times, even though it does take months or a year or two sometimes. But
I love what you said about adaptive physiology, that all disease or just a diagnosis I mean, it's not a life sentence. It's your physiology adapting to nutrients being out of balance, for example, a lack of nutrients. And if you kind of think of the body like 37 trillion cells, and you just don't have enough, I mean, everyone knows what vitamin C is. If you don't have enough vitamin C, the body just can't build these cells like a big brick house with 37 trillion bricks. And when it comes time to replacing some bricks, now the body just can't make healthy, or it's incomplete bricks because it doesn't have that one nutrient out of all the nutrients we need. And we're discovering more and more every day that even the phytochemicals, there's over 1,000 of them in broccoli, and that all plays a role in as antioxidants and just healing the body on so many levels. So we don't even know. I mean, we think we know all the micronutrients, and then we discover more and more. And now we're discovering, like you said, the gut biome with probiotics is like this whole other world that we're discovering. And now there's methylation and the genome and epigenetics. And so we think we know everything about health, and MDs are 50 years behind. Because, and I don't want to say all MDs, I know there's some incredible ones out there, but the majority of them go to medical school, think they know everything, and yet they're only really trained in drugs. And so then they tell a patient, well, you're just going to have to live with this diabetes or this Hashimoto's for the rest of your life. And they go on persisting this myth, this lie, that a disease is permanent, because they've only been trained on how to manage it, not on how to heal people and reverse it.
That's a very good statement. And there are some MDs that are getting into the so-called functional medicine. And I asked one of them here. He's a very nice, sweet, soft-spoken man. He's pretty well-versed with nutrition. And I asked him, I said, how do you practice so much nutrition? I said, I know that's kind of a no-no in your profession. He says, I keep my head down and hope my colleagues don't notice because I don't want to be blackballed. So there's a lot of pressure to stay within the medical model, which, there's nothing wrong with that. The medical profession, they saved my leg from a spider bite. They saved me from an accidental gunshot wound. They patched me up after, stupid accidents you have when you're 19, or some boys do. And so they've done a really, really good job, and I appreciate what they do. But if one tells you you can get it all out of your food, all the nutrition, you need to run because he doesn't read his own research.
Was there ever a point in human history you think we got all of our nutrition from our food, but or do you think to really have optimal health, it would just be incredibly difficult to do that?
I think in the past it was much, much easier before we started tearing up the microbiome of the soil. But if you look, the civilizations that live the longest are the ones that, they get runoff from glacial milk, where the glaciers grinding up the rocks and the minerals are coming down through the water and nourishing the soil and the crops. The ones that grow it on top of lava. I actually bought some sort of mineral out of Utah, and I don't know. The universe has so many blessings. Janet paid for one bag, and they sent four. And so I took these minerals that were ground up and I put it all over my little bitty garden and all over my yard. And within 2 months, it was like, oh my God, you can tell where I live just based on my yard because I put minerals back in the soil. And I also put earthworms in the soil too because they do a lot of work. And you can tell where I live just by looking at my yard.
Yep, I know exactly what you're. Is it a big pink bag?
I think it was somewhere out of Utah, and I
Yeah,
forget the name of what it was. They're
I
they're
I ordered
fantastic.
the exact same. I know exactly what you're talking about. I ordered the exact same one. It's humic shale, and it will make your entire neighborhood jealous of your lawn, but it also makes your garden just grow like you wouldn't believe, and also it makes the nutrients. There's a way to test the sugar content. There's this little like laser gun that you can point at vegetables. You can go to the grocery store and use it. It's cool. You point it at each vegetable or fruit, and it'll tell you sort of, there's this like scale that tells you the nutrient content, whether it's going to taste like cardboard, like those tomatoes that taste like cardboard,
Oh
or the
yeah.
tomatoes that taste like your grandmother grew them, right?
What's the
And
name of that?
oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. I'll remember. I'll put it in the show notes of the podcast. But it's a you could just buy this. You could buy this device and go and point it at the food, and it'll tell you. And so it's I believe what it is testing the sugar content of the vegetable or fruit. But in doing so, in order for that vegetable or fruit to have made that level of sugar content, it had to have had the presence of enough minerals in the soil.
Yes.
So it's also a way to test whether there's just more vitamins and more minerals or more nutrients in that fruit or vegetable. And there's actually been studies done with this particular humic shale that farmers can buy in bulk, or you can just buy for your own garden. And I got the PDF from the company of all the studies that they conducted, and they found that it can actually increase the nutrients in the crops by 2.5 times, which was really fascinating. And the growth, there's like the sort of side by side photos of here's a tomato plant grown over here with nothing. Here's a tomato plant grown with the humic shale, and you could just see that crops grew much larger with it, which just makes so much sense. That I mean, and you look at a plant and how healthy a plant can get when you give it more minerals. That's the same with the body, because we're a living being just like that plant. You throw a bunch of minerals at us, and look what happens.
That's a really good point. And, that would take a lot of the challenge off of the toxins that's coming in. Um, one of my favorite stories is there was this organic farmer, and he's a really great guy. And I get in trouble because I talked to him too long. And he moved from New York to North Carolina. And he says, Dr. Lewis, I've done your stuff for 2 years and I felt absolutely fantastic. And I got first runner up best organic farm within a year of moving to the new farm. He says, but why do I feel terrible when I don't take your supplements? And I said, you don't know what's in your food, your organic stuff. And he just went on and on and on. And I made him read some research. And he said, oh my God, polar bears have thyroid problems and osteoporosis, and we don't spray things there. He said once he read some of the research that I told him to read, he said, I didn't know the world was that polluted. And I said, that's why you need to supplement, and to supplement the soil, which he does more of now. But that's a really good point. I've always told people, well, if the carrots are sweet, that's because they're full of minerals that have turned to sugar. And if they're, as you say, taste like cardboard, like those tomatoes, you're not getting much but fiber anyway. So I love the organic farmers because they can even be improved upon, it, even though they eat totally organic.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So we talked about foods to avoid, grains being a big one, and also then the food additives like dyes and MSG, which are just chemicals our body does not need. It just gunks up the works. What about foods to include? What are your favorite healing foods that we could include?
Well, I think variety is very important, and I think we kind of get down to, oh, well, I eat my three favorite vegetables, and that should not be potatoes. And folks, corn is not a vegetable, it's a grain. But I think variety. My favorite is avocados, although that's a fruit. Apples, celery. I juice a lot of celery, but I throw some of the fiber back in because I think fiber's pretty incredible. Cucumbers, tomatoes, and yeah, I try to get it from people that grow it correctly if I didn't grow it myself. The bigger variety, there's a lot of different lettuces. I don't eat iceberg lettuce, but any other types of greens, spinach and kale and, collards and things like that. Of course, I'm from the South, so there's a lot of collard greens and poke salad greens. Um, I just try to go into the grocery store and it's like, wow, I don't know what that is. Let me try it. And they do have a pretty good variety. Used to, you might get 100 different vegetables because the old farms, like the ones my grandparents grew, it might be several acres and there would be so much variety. And now I think we've kind of gotten down to, well, my taste buds only like this. So, you know, widen your scope of what you're thinking about and what you consume.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of walnuts and pecans, avocados. Of course, I don't eat much. I go home at night. I may just eat a little almond butter or half an avocado, and that's it.
So you really love to nourish the body with healthy fats.
Yeah, I really think the keto craze is probably the best thing going, and I watch one of the more famous keto guys, and of course that's they recommend everybody gets their lab work from me. And they'll say, well, I've gone on keto and I'm having these problems. Should I quit keto? My cholesterol's going high. And I'm like, well, no, if you do your lab, the cholesterol going high is not really an issue anyway. But um, maybe you need digestive enzymes, or maybe you have a little bit of an immune system response that's incorrect or inability to respond. And sometimes just probiotics and digestive enzymes will fix that. And cholesterol's, there's plenty of books written about cholesterol and how it's been a lie told so long and so loud that people believe it.
Oh, no kidding. Well, so for people who haven't heard the truth about cholesterol, I know we're getting a little off topic from thyroid, but you brought it up, man. I have to talk about it. Can you explain why cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease?
Well, it's not about the cholesterol. It's more about is there inflammation to make the cholesterol stick? There's good and bad cholesterol. And the thing about it is, it's about the size, which we have labs that'll test that if it's the correct size. But we always on our test measure HSCRP, which is inflammation, more cardiovascular specific, which is 4 times more likely to cause a cardiac event than high cholesterol. So, and thyroid has a lot to do with whether your cholesterol is good or bad, as does liver and GI function. The thing about it is, and again, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to give medical advice, but I see so many people that come in here on statin drugs, and I never tell them to get off of it. That's not my job. But there'll be a 50 to 60-year-old man, and the wife has him by the arm, and he just kind of has a funny gait when he comes in. And she'll say, well, about 3 months ago, he got depressed. I can't keep him out of the recliner, and he just has no motivation. I said, he also lost his ability to have sex too. And then the guy gets a tear in his eye. I said, so that was 3 months ago, and you put him on statin drugs 6 months ago. And they said, how did you know? When you lower that cholesterol, Below 160, you just doubled your risk of stroke. And stroke is one of the cardiovascular events. And, you get inflammation in the arteries and all that. And inflammation stops something called nitrous oxide synthase. For you guys that are listening, nitrous oxide synthase is why Viagra works, but it's better to do it naturally. So, cholesterol is not about heart disease. It's about what is your inflammation level, what is your homocysteine level, and that's the B vitamins, whether they're utilizing it. What's your magnesium level? Magnesium's the first thing you should test.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, magnesium, not a lot of people test it. Now, the test is the red blood cell magnesium test, the RBC magnesium. Is that the best
Yes,
test to determine magnesium levels? And what should the level
absolutely.
be? I've heard that 5 is the number you want it to be at. Where do you like to see your clients or patients?
Yeah, I think the ranges, of course, they'll vary with the labs. The ranges are about 4 to 6.2. I think it's not nearly enough unless it hits 5 to 5.5. And, that has a lot to do with brain function. So, if you're depressed and have lost your hope, it could be as simple as a magnesium deficiency, too.
Amazing. That I mean, it just I love that you pointed that out. Something as simple as a magnesium deficiency can make you go down the path of depression and wanting to give
Right.
up hope and all that. And it was one nutrient, just one nutrient. Um, I just had a family member. I just gave a family member of mine a magnesium foot soak. It makes you absorb about 4 grams of magnesium in 40 minutes by putting your feet in it. And she hadn't walked. There's this particular walk, which is several miles around a big lake in Seattle. And she texted me after doing 2 foot soaks 2 days in a row. And she said the first time in 15 months she walked around the whole lake, and it had been, it's been she's been having, health issues that challenged her, and then she's sort of lost the motivation, and it really affected just 2 foot soaks with magnesium, got her mood back and got her energy back.
Well, isn't that amazing that you have a family member that actually listens to you? You're an authority to that. That's a
it
miracle.
I feel like it took me many years of drilling down, and it's only one family member. I probably have like 90 others that won't listen to me, but you're right. It is a miracle, and I am grateful, um, because I love helping people I care about. Obviously, I love helping everyone, but that's just one nutrient, and there's so many more minerals. Just you talk about how much your patients notice a difference when they get on minerals, and that's just one nutrient, and she saw such a big difference. Now, you talked about juicing celery. Is there a particular reason? What does celery do for the body? Why would we want to incorporate celery or celery juicing?
Well, there's a lot of potassium in it, but there are also other minerals, including magnesium. I don't worry so much about calcium. It seems to be enough in your diet. You can usually get calcium, but you want a lot of magnesium and potassium. And, people say, well, salt is bad for you. It's like, well, I call baloney on that. Salt is not bad for you, and it's only bad if you're magnesium deficient. And that's why it was used as currency hundreds and thousands of years ago. So I don't know. I do celery. Janet doesn't especially like the taste. I said, well, throw in an organic apple, or you can juice your cucumbers. She said, oh, I'd rather eat the cucumbers, which she does almost every night. There's actually a lot of research. There was one book written, I must have read it 30 years ago, about if people with high potassium have almost no cancer at all. And I don't think cancer is that simple, but if one mineral can do that, can you imagine if you threw in a wide array of proper minerals? And
Hmm.
I say the word proper, and this is probably the hardest thing I have to do is to convince people there's a difference in quality of supplements.
Oh, I was just gonna go buy some Centrum.
Oh, yeah, you're brilliant. Yeah, people say, but I'm taking calcium carbonate. And I said, well, you need to go to West Texas and chip off a limestone rock and lick on it. You'll be just fine. And, I have to say things in a manner where they think about it a little differently. And so, again, my intent's usually very, very good, but I say things in a kind of a crazy manner. Um, and they'll say, well, I'm taking Centrum. I'm taking, one a day. I give my kids Flintstones. I said, well, you really ought to Google the ingredients in some of these. And some of these vitamins are actually made from coal tar. Can you really digest and assimilate and utilize coal tar?
That should be illegal. I mean, it is just disgusting,
Yeah, it should be.
right? It's absolutely crazy. What really drove me nuts is my naturopath warned me. She goes, went back when I was pregnant. She goes, don't take any of those prenatals over the counter. The little pink prenatals. She just was so angry that these pharmaceutical companies make these prenatal one a day vitamins, and then they dye them pink, and they use known carcinogenic, cancer causing dyes, and they put them in a pill that a pregnant woman's going to take for 9 or 10 months. And that's, basically, feeding, I know I get it. It's just one a day, but seriously, like, you had to make it pink and give a fetus known carcinogen. Like, just how evil do these companies have to be?
I taught my kids when they were very small, to think for themselves. They'd say, well, on the commercial it said this. And I said, yes, but here's the real truth to it. And I would teach them all kinds of little lessons, like in the grocery store, the cart in front of me would have a screaming kid, and the mother would give the kid candy to shut the kid up. And I would look at my little girls and say, what did that mother just teach her child? And my kids would say, well, the mother taught the child to scream to get something that's going to be harmful to them, which was candy. So I taught them from an early age to think for themselves and to try to use that spirit of discernment and that wisdom.
Very smart, very smart. I think my son's 3. I think the other day he said, "Is it organic?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, sweetie. Everything I give you is organic."
You've done a great job. That's awesome.
Is it organic? I can't wait for him to say, "Is it gluten free?" That's the next one he'll say. But is it organic? I'm like, yeah. I told him, if someone says it's not organic, you don't eat it. Now, you really briefly mentioned that fiber is really important. For those who don't know why is fiber so important?
Well, there's this big buzz about, do your probiotics have prebiotics? Well, if you're eating vegetables and you're getting the soluble and insoluble fiber, you won't get the insulin spike from the sugar, and it gives the probiotics a place to live. So I think the fiber is incredibly important. That's how it's made. We need to, for the most part, eat it in that form.
Mm-hmm. Just to go back and clarify, when you talked about cholesterol, the problem isn't the cholesterol. The problem is the inflammation and what's causing the inflammation, and getting to the root cause of that to prevent a reverse heart disease. And that cholesterol is a needed nutrient in the body that can go awry when there's inflammation and damage happening, oxidative damage and oxidative stress happening. Um, so for us to really look at heart disease as or look at like your labs of the variety of different sizes of cholesterol in the body as a sign as to what's going on deeper in the body and what we can do to reverse it, right? So MDs will go, "Oh, your cholesterol's high, here's a drug." And then that drug has a host of side effects, like you said, stroke, being and
Yeah.
infertility and peripheral neuropathy. So now people can't feel their feet or can't feel their hands and feet, and now they get vertigo and they fall down. They like hurt themselves because they can't even feel their feet. And so there's all this damage by the cholesterol lowering medications, and that still doesn't really clean up the root cause of what's causing the heart disease.
Right. And I'm maybe not quite as polite as you. I look at these men. I said, and you can't feel your genitals, much less use them. And then they're motivated to do something correct. You tell a man that, he's going to do anything. He's putty in your hands to get well then.
Now, we talked about some of the blue zones in the world. You'd mentioned, the ones where the water is coming down. It's almost like milk, this white water that's coming down from
Right,
the mountains, and that these
right.
cultures that are surrounded by minerally rich water, and they use that water even with their crops and with their animals, and they live long and without disease. There's other blue zones in the world where they eat sometimes vegetarian or almost completely vegetarian diets. What's your stance on eating no meat? Do you think that some people that it's good for some people, it's good for all people, it's good for no people? Where is your stance on animal consumption?
I treat a lot of vegans, and I'm personally not a vegan, and I don't judge. I know some people that eat almost exclusively meat, which I think is equally just as bad. I have a daughter-in-law that's a vegan, and I'll sit there and eat a ribeye in front of her, but of course, I try to go for the better meat. I don't think it's the healthiest diet being a vegan, but and I do the lab on dozens and dozens and dozens of them long term. Now, again, I think there's some genetic differences, and I personally, just I'm not knocking veganism, but I see people that eat too much meat, and it's from the confined animal feeding operations, and I'm very much against that also. And I think Americans eat too much meat. That's why I like the keto better, because they're more into healthy fats and just a small to moderate amount of clean protein. A chicken running in the pasture is different than a chicken that's in the coop and has 1 square foot to live. So when we,
Mm.
it's about quality. So yeah, I treat vegans, vegetarians, and people that eat too much meat and kill their kidneys. So I think moderation and what's right for you. I mean, I love my daughter-in-law, and if she wants to be a vegan, that's fine. It apparently is fairly healthy for her.
But looking at labs, you see that what do you see in the long-term health of the labs of vegans that concerns you?
Well, again, I've seen some that are very, very healthy, but the majority of them seem to be a problem. And it's not just as simple as, oh, you have to supplement with B12, which you'd get out of meat. One of the things I've seen is glandular problems, back to the thyroid and the adrenals. And I just tell people success leaves clues, but so does failure. Which road do you want to go down? The problems I see is the thyroid's usually much, much worse. There's really a problem with the adrenal glands, and normally their progesterone is almost zero compared to their estrogen. Or on a man, they just have a real tough time producing testosterone and DHEA, for example.
Oh, very interesting. And but someone could go ketogenic and vegan. They could eat all the healthy fats. Would they be able to reverse that?
I think that's a good way for most people, yes. Now, I've told quite a few of these vegans, I said, well, some of the products that I would suggest, some of them are animal derived. And one lady says, but I'm a raw vegan. And she was 20. And I said, yeah, I understand, but you're really, really sick. And you came to me with these problems. And she said, can I just get the products that don't have the animal byproducts in it? I said, yes, ma'am, of course you can, but you're not going to get the results. You need a digestive enzyme that, contains some animal products. You need the glandulars, like the thyroid glandular, the adrenal glandular, maybe the thymus and spleen. And these companies source from cleaner animals. We get a lot of our stuff from companies that get it out of Argentina and New Zealand, places that have cleaner cows and cleaner sheep and cleaner pigs than we do in America. And that's a sad statement that you have to source a lot of your raw materials out of America to get it clean.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the healthy fats are really good. There are a lot of vegan keto followers, but again, I think you should at least get rid of wheat, if nothing else.
Got it. I like that you brought up glandular. I wanted to ask you about those supplements. So those people who have thyroid imbalance, um, is taking a glandular thyroid a good alternative to taking a like a synthroid or Armor Thyroid, like for those, who have been prescribed because they have hypothyroidism, could someone get that from a natural source? I've heard of a supplement called, and I don't even know if it's good. I have a few friends who are taking it, Nature Throid, and they said it was like a natural, basically a over-the-counter natural supplement that was the equivalent of taking a prescription, but it was natural. I'd love to hear your feedback on that strategy.
I think that's an excellent strategy personally. And again, depending on the source, we use some that's actually a pork thyroid glandular that just works like gangbusters. And then I have one that's a kind of more broad spectrum, has a lot of thyroid, spleen, thymus, and adrenal. Because, you have that axis, and sometimes we use pituitary also because that's where a lot of the, for example, thyroid stimulating hormone comes from. So, yeah, I think that's a great strategy. And I tell people because they're saying, "Can I get off this drug?" And I'm careful. It's like, no, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not going to give you advice on drugs. Your MD will want to get you off of it if you don't need it. And of course, I educate them. Yeah, I hear that too. I educate them so they can talk intelligently to their MD, and the MDs, for the most part, or at least around here, for the most part, very cooperative. For example, I have a good relationship with them. I had an MD come up here, and I didn't know he's an MD, but he said, "Your reputation at the hospital is you can lower cholesterol without prescribing drugs." I said, "I'm a chiropractor. I don't prescribe drugs, couldn't prescribe drugs, and if I could, I wouldn't." And I said, "I'm glad my reputation is good." And I said, "What's your cholesterol?" And he says, 240. I said, "There's nothing wrong with 240. I said, "What is your homocysteine? What is your magnesium? What is your C-reactive protein?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "But I want my cholesterol down." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm an anesthesiologist." I said, "Well, that's a pretty important job, but if you get your cholesterol down too low, then you're not going to repair your brain, and you don't know if you turn the gas up or down, you're going to kill patients because you're going to have a brain fart." And he said, "Well, I want it anyway." I said, "Well, okay, but what's the real truth? Because there's something you're not telling me." He said, "Well, the truth is I get cheaper insurance if I have really, really low cholesterol." And I said, "Okay, I do that for insurance agents, on their customers all the time." I said, "But you don't want to keep it down." And he kind of looked at me, and I quoted some of the research, and it's like I'm pretty good at, I can remember quite a bit of it when I need to. But that's my reputation at the hospital. I can get cholesterol down. I tell them there's so much more to that equation that can make you healthier. Don't obsess about cholesterol. And the analogy I use is killing cholesterol is just about as smart as saying we should kill firemen because they're always around a fire and thinking that half the firemen are going to have equal half the fires. That's stupid, right? And people say, "Yeah, it's right." I said, "Well, so is killing cholesterol."
Mm-hmm. I watched a whole documentary, and I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a while ago, where they interviewed the doctors that were responsible for coming up with the standard number for what the high cholesterol is and what's normal cholesterol and what's low cholesterol. And they said, they admitted, there was two doctors, and they admitted that they were asked to come up with it, and it was just like they just shot in the dark. They just had to
Yeah,
pick a number and go with it. And now they've lowered it since then and said, okay, now, now 170 is like this, and now we want it to be 120 or whatever. Like they just keep lowering it.
right.
They said it was a giant social experiment because the pharmaceutical companies are just coming out with these drugs to lower cholesterol. And it was, this, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 years ago, but this is sort of like the big social experiment, because they said if we said the number was this, then they said half the population would have high cholesterol if we said the number was this, and we needed enough people to get on this drug so we could see if it would make a difference to lower heart disease. Basically, they needed a big enough guinea pig because the drug had already been approved, but they needed enough people to put them on it to make a big enough sort of grand social experiment. And
Hmm.
it's just pretty sick that this myth persists. Like cholesterol, What myths around thyroid exist that you'd like to bust today?
Oh, thyroid's like a woman. If thyroid's not happy, nobody's happy. They say if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. The myth is here's the thing. I'm just going to go off the top of my head a bunch of list of symptoms, but here's the myth. People will say, I have two or three of those symptoms. I have a thyroid problem. But you have to be careful with that because there's so many other conditions that can present the same symptom. But with a hypothyroid, you can have the weight gain, inability to lose weight. You can have fatigue. That's two of the most common. Headaches when you wake up that usually wear off during the day. Depression, constipation. We've talked about the depression. um, Poor circulation. Your hands and feet will get cold. Slowed immune system. So slow wound healing, I guess. Itchy, dry skin, especially on the back of your arms between your elbow and your shoulder. If that's kind of rough and scaly, you would suspect thyroid. Brittle hair, the hair falls out real easily, or the outer third of your eyebrows, things like that. But please, folks, don't diagnose it just off of a list or off Google. And one of the crazy stories I tell, which is a true story, Janet and I were in Hot Springs one time. We like to go to Hot Springs, cute little town up in Arkansas, and she wasn't feeling well, and I went on to sleep, and she said, well, in the morning, I found out what I had. I Googled it. And I said, great, what is the answer? And she said, I have prostate cancer.
That's funny.
Stay off of Google. It's a really quick downward spiral to doom, despair, and death. Um, so I think the first thing on thyroid is, yeah, go for iodine. But if you have Hashimoto's, you should have that TPO tested. But many times when you get on the proper amount of iodine and you can override where those receptors are filled with bromine or fluoride or chlorine, which, that's those three halides are real prevalent in our society. You notice sometimes that ADD, ADHD goes away. People that scar real easily do the keloid scarring. Usually that will go away with the proper amount of iodine. Many cysts in the breast will go away. People that have too much mucus production, of course, that can be diet also. Hemorrhoids. Ladies have hemorrhoids because they had a baby. I said, well, there's this one thing for this, but you need iodine too. Sometimes the ovarian disease, even if it's PCOS, which that's usually related to diabetes and high blood sugar, but it can very much get better. Men with prostate disorders, can benefit many times from thyroid supplementation of the iodine for the thyroid. So it's antibacterial. That's why it would help clear up a prostate. So I think just be careful. Don't go with one list and make sure you're getting it tested by a doctor that knows what they're doing.
Mm. You had mentioned too much mucus production. Is that from dairy?
Yeah, that's why I said the disclaimer about diet. Dairy's a pretty tough one, and had a guy on another podcast ask me. He said, "Well, I own a share of a cow, and I'm doing it raw." I said, "Well, that's much different because you're getting the good bacteria with that. So the homogenized pasteurized dairy is usually not a good thing for many people."
But if you can source fresh raw dairy, um, that's different, is nutritionally and also has the good bacteria. I've heard some people that cannot stand any other dairy other than raw dairy, and I've been allergic to dairy my whole life. Um, and went to a farmer's market. Some naturopath said try it, and we
Hmm.
got and it was yellow. I mean, it was yellow
Yeah.
fluid, right?
Right.
And because of the healthy fats, because they were actually the cow was raised on grass, And we didn't, sit down and chug glasses of it. We had it like a supplement. We would take like a few sips, a few ounces, put it back in the
Right.
fridge, um, and just had it for a few days. I didn't have any symptoms. And then the next time we went to the farmer's market the next year, it was a different farmer. It wasn't yellow. For all I know, the guy went to the grocery store and bought some milk and then mixed it with cream or something and sold it for more money. But on the way home, I just had a few sips, and on the way home, I started having massive reactions like the gas and the pain and the mucus and the sore throat and the burning in the eyes. And I knew there was something different. But the raw milk, when I had it, and the guy claimed it was raw, but you buy from farmers markets, buyer beware. Um, but that one time when I had raw milk and we knew it was clearly yellow and clearly raw, I had no symptoms. I thought that was really interesting. So,
If you've drank enough raw milk and then you go back to the regular milk, after that you can taste the difference, if you had that kind of experience.
mm-hmm.
My daddy milked a Jersey cow when I was a kid, but it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So when my two kids couldn't take the formula, and I found a guy that had goats, because goat milk actually is as close to human milk as you can get. And, I went and bought goat milk and gave the guy a real premium because he's just a sweetheart of a guy. And my kids just thrived on the goat milk, but they're very allergic to the pasteurized, homogenized cow milk.
Oh, that's really interesting. My son, the same. I had to find, unfortunately, I had to substitute with a supplement.
Hmm.
And I was afraid of going with goat milk because, the web told me that it didn't contain all the proteins that a baby needs. And so I was a little weary. But when they get a little bit older, like a toddler, and they're eating more than just, you can give it to them once they're eating some foods, but you can't give it to them if that's the only thing they're consuming. But you're saying that's not true. That wasn't what you found to be true.
Well, it worked real well with my two kids, and it may be true. I don't really know. I'm real quick. I know this is strange for a man, but I will look at you and say, I don't know. Men never say that. They took away my man card.
Excellent. Well, I think this is important to go back to what's natural. What you're saying is, back when we used to, you know, pull the pull the potato out of the ground ourselves, pull the tuber out of the ground ourselves, or pick the
Right.
strawberry ourselves right out of the ground and eat it, we were getting all the bacteria from the soil that was alive that then helps our body. It aids that for the health and the gut health in our body. And now that we live in a sterile environment and our food is sterile, milk isn't healthy. But you can find health. Some people are really saying they do find health from raw milk, and I know it's controversial, but coming back to that, it's bringing in the healthy gut flora, uh, and the needed fats.
I think the word you said was sterile, and one of the things is we have become too sterilized as a society, and we're now phobic about germs. I think the major ingredient in hand sanitizer is called paranoia. And, you know, your kids are better, they have fewer allergies if they play in the dirt, if they have a dog or a cat, because they're exposed to that and their body can, build their immune system from that. So yes, I wash my hands a lot, so I don't even have many fingerprints. But that's the nature of, well, you go from one patient to the next. You need to do that. But I think we're too paranoid about germs. If you have an immune system, uh, your body will take care of itself, and some of that paranoia is I think because the thyroid is not working correctly. The thyroid actually has a lot to do with whether your body produces and absorbs. Uh, I like to pick on serotonin and dopamine. They're feel good hormones, the neurotransmitters, but they're a little bit differently. When you're low in serotonin, and that goes back to gut health, but it's very, very related to thyroid, is loss of pleasure. If you don't enjoy your
Mm.
hobby anymore, if you're paranoid, if you have an inner rage, so to speak, or depression, you don't have a goal in life and don't care, The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is you don't care. So be scared, scared if your spouse says, I don't care. Depression, no enthusiasm. You don't have favorite foods anymore. And, you're too overly dependent, where that's usually serotonin, which we give 5-HTP for that. But dopamine is kind of feeling like you're worthless and hopeless. Then you start having the self-destructive thoughts. Dopamine deficiency, which is very highly tied to the thyroid, are the ones that become addicts, like sex addict, gambling addicts, alcoholics, or narcotics. So there's a lady that came over here and says, well, my husband is a gambling addict, and we live about 70 miles from the casinos in Louisiana. And I said, well, he's probably low in dopamine. Here, get him to take this. And she says, he won't take it. I said, well, tell him it's for testosterone. He'll take it.
Oh my gosh, you're so smart. I think all the women listening are going, I gotta hire this guy to help me with my husband's health because he knows how to coach me and what to say to get my husband to take it. That's so funny. You're right. Every man wants more testosterone. So did he take it?
Well, not willingly. She started in his coffee, and he stopped his gambling addiction. And she told me this to be the truth. And she said he was doing so good, and I ran out. And about a week after I ran out, he went to Shreveport, and he blew about $15,000, which,
Oh.
for most people is a huge amount of money. And she said, I'll never run out of this stuff again. But he didn't know it because it was being stirred into his coffee in the morning.
Okay, what is this stuff?
Well, it's called Dopa Boost. It's, some of the precursors for your body to make
Great.
dopamine.
Obviously, we buy it from you, from your website, greenwisdomhealth.com. But we'd probably want to have a consultation with you first before just nilly-willy buying whatever supplements, right?
I really prefer it that way. Yeah, you can get on my website and order a lot of things. There's some things you can't see unless you're a real patient, because some of the supplements are that strong. But I only deal with the ones that are the best of the best and a good price for what you get. That's important to me too. But the thyroid, we've gone all around the thyroid. And I'm sorry, I'm bad about going around rabbit trails. I'm famous for that.
It's okay, me too. But the point, I hope the listener isn't frustrated by that. But the point is that we can't have a reductionistic philosophy when it comes to the thyroid. And if someone was expecting us to only talk about thyroid, that's a reductionistic medicine. And then we're negating the fact that the body acts as a whole. And you like you said, we started off by talking about how to heal thyroid. Well, we don't even look at the thyroid. We start off by looking at the gut and healing the gut, because that's the root cause of the problem that started the domino effect in the body, is that there's going to be multiple systems that are at play. And so we're over here talking about cholesterol, we have to think of the body as a whole. So we have to talk about all the different things. So I wanted to talk about diet. I want to talk about supplements. I want to talk about lifestyle and also the mindset. Like you said, change that mental perception from having a diagnosis that you're a life sentence, right? So that you can get on a drug for the rest of your life, to changing your mindset that your diagnosis is just your physiology adapting to the nutrients it has or does not have in the moment. And by giving it the nutrients it needs. And that also includes lifestyle, because stress robs the body of certain nutrients, right? And so we can really help by getting enough sleep, getting exercise, all the things you'd probably tell us to do. But in addition to that, taking the necessary supplements and eating a healthy diet, changing our mindset, these very broad things are not only going to help the thyroid, but they're also going to help clean up other areas, because you cannot look at the body as only one organ or one system at a time.
You're not only brilliant, but you're very eloquent too. That's very nicely put. I love that.
Well, I learned from you. I learned a lot from you. So I found this fascinating. If someone is it more common that when someone has a thyroid issue that they may have serotonin and dopamine issues because they likely also have gut issues? Is that why there's that connection?
I think so. I don't think, you said the word reductionist, and you don't hear that word very much, and that's very, very true. When you come into a doctor's office, he says, "Oh, well, you're the left elbow, or you're the thyroid." It's like you need to run like crazy. But yeah, look at the body as a whole. I think one thing cascades into the other, and that's why you have to look at the whole body, and you have to look at the mental health. You have to look at their spiritual health. You have to look, are they speaking all these negative things because they have that doom and gloom, which can be the serotonin or dopamine and can be the thyroid? But you kind of have to, kind of suck it up and speak positive, because you actually can create, patients that look for, oh, is this going to help this? And am I going to feel better? Those people get well so much more quickly than people say, oh, am I going to have this symptom? Oh, is it going to make me sick? And it's all mindset. One of my favorite books is Negaholics, and it's how people get hooked on negativity and the adrenaline the adrenals put out. But if you're a negaholic for a long time, always looking for the other shoe to fall, then you blow out your adrenals. So adrenals, that can take 2 or 3 years to heal if you're,
Mm.
pretty chronic and severe.
Mm. I love that. See, because you were looking at nagging is something you'd think, okay, this is emotional or mental, right? Nagging is emotional or mental health. You wouldn't think that there's anything physiological, and yet you look and you see that the negative attitudes, because that constantly triggers the stress response, thinking
Hmm.
about and focusing on the worst case scenarios is triggering that fight or flight, which is constantly telling the adrenal glands to be in a state of stress, and that puts the whole body on high alert, and the whole body as is just being depleted again and again and again, because it's going into survival mode. And so here you have, basically, it all starts with mindset, attitude, and a belief system, something that's not physiological. It can't like point at your belief system and say there's an elbow, right? Like there's a belief system. I can't show you a wounded belief system, but there you go, a few years of that kind of self-talk, and the way someone is communicating about themselves and to others, and now shows up on labs, because the body, the mental body, physical body, emotional body, and spiritual body are all one, and we need to address all of it. And I love that you do that, especially coming from your background as a chiropractor, looking at the person as a whole and their whole lifestyle. Can you just reiterate, so that the dopamine is addiction? So and that could that also be like addiction to TV or addiction to video games? Is it any addiction?
Yeah, I think we're all addicted to our phones and Facebook. We don't want to know what it is. We want to know what's next. And here, I'm gonna throw my man card away again. Some people with these addictions to the internet or video games, they're like a man with a remote control. We don't want to know what's on. We want to know what else is on. That's why we keep channel surfing. So there goes my man card again.
And then the serotonin, which is started in the gut, like you said. So oftentimes those with gut issues that then stem to thyroid could also have a serotonin imbalance. What was it that we're looking for in those with low serotonin, besides being depressed? Is it, like you said, is it defeatist? Is it like that mindset, or that is it negative talk, self-talk?
Pretty much so. And I find people that have really low serotonin and that defeatist attitude generally are full of yeast. And
Oh.
I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but people that have a candida infection and it's really, really bad, they kind of get a little defeatist whine about the tone of voice. It's like, well, I don't know, and those are the ones you have to really hug and tell their spouse, listen, you've got to be a good positive support for this your spouse, because they don't have the strength, because that candida is robbing them. And those are the people that also generally have fibromyalgia and symptom. That's a big conundrum of symptoms. But yeah, that's mostly serotonin. So if you get a good 5-HTP, And, that's the other thing. People say, but I've been taking 5-HTP from the big box store. I said, well, here, try mine. And they say, oh my God, what a difference. I said, there is a huge difference, just like your wonderful spouse now versus your ex-spouse. There's a difference in supplements, just like there is your crazy ex that was harmful to you. And, I say it in a weird way so people will remember this, or, I hope they do.
That is so funny. The store-bought supplements are like your crazy ex.
Yeah, most of us have had one.
Oh, that's too funny. In summary, could you give us some actionable steps so those who are listening are just dying to know what could they do today to start having a healthy thyroid? And of course, I urge listeners who really really want to fully heal, and you need to get labs. I know we've talked about that, but you can't just like you said, don't self-diagnose. Don't just throw yourself at supplements without having the wisdom behind them of what to take and when and how much and for how long, because you don't have not there's not all supplements you want to take forever, right? It's just we need to always be listening to the body and bringing it back into balance. And just like drugs, you don't want to be on a drug forever. You don't want to be on every supplement forever. It's just we want to listen to someone who has the wisdom, so listeners could hire you and work with you around the world. And that's greenwisdomhealth.com. They can get on Skype. You can help them order labs, and then the labs get emailed to you, and then you can talk to them, and then help them to correct their diet and their supplements, and then you start seeing results, right? And then you follow up with them. So it sounds painless because you don't have to drive to someone and go in traffic and look for parking. So it's all from home, which is great. But for those who would like to just start right now doing something, what are the general, without looking at labs, what are the actual steps you could tell us to take today to start healing our thyroid and having better health?
Well, besides, filling out a health survey and, getting some lab, there are some general supplements that you can take that will never hurt you. Some of my multivitamins, for example, they rate a 4.5 on a 5-star system, and they don't cost like the quality that they are. Then we have different thyroid supplements that, have the zinc, the selenium, the iodine in them, so that will not hurt you. Um, I personally think a good multivitamin is always good. I love the good fish oils because sometimes it's not so much your thyroid, but it's the inflammation. And fish oil is so anti-inflammatory. It's a long process to get the inflammation down. It starts at about 2 weeks and then gets better after that. But, find somebody that your discerning spirit says, that person, male or female, sounds like they care, sounds like they're knowledgeable, whatever your criteria is. I tell people I'm not a good fit for everybody because I'm a little bit, they say cowboy-ish, although I couldn't saddle a horse, but I'm a little to the point. Hey, here's the problem, but more importantly, here's the solution. And, I'll hug you. So if you don't like hugs, don't come to my office. Um, yeah. And, I make fun of myself all the time, but, don't believe the hype. I try to teach you enough so that you can think for yourself. And that's why the discussion about cholesterol. I think that is more of a myth than anything, just to sell statin drugs. But I mean, my favorite drug is caffeine. So, that tells you a lot about me.
In terms of iodine, is there a particular form of iodine? Like I've heard of nascent iodine being the best. Do you have a particular form of iodine you think is better, or is that the best?
Well, everybody has their favorite, but I think I usually sell iodine and iodide because there's so many different chemical conversions, and most people don't know it, but you need B2 and B3 to convert this. B6, B12, the 5-MTHF, which is the synthetic laboratory made folic acid. Uh, that's why I like to give, well, if this don't work, that has another form that will. So iodine and iodide, I think, is important.
Oh, very interesting. I love that you mentioned that. So the Coke, a lot of people just take singular or mega doses of a single nutrient from a single supplement, like a vitamin C or a zinc or, here we got iodine. But you're saying that in order for the body to even use it, there's all these cofactors. And so if you're deplete in those other cofactors, your body, doesn't matter how much of the iodine you're going to take, your body just isn't optimally going to be able to use it.
You speak so eloquently, you make me look smart.
No.
So.
I love to reiterate things so that I can better understand them, and if I can better understand them, I know the listener can, and so I like to just wrap my brain around it, and but this is so important. This is why a lot of times people want to go towards whole food based supplements. And I see a lot of your supplements are like your one of your iodine supplements has a derivative from kelp.
Yes.
Look, because food, the way God made food is you could never be smarter in a lab than the way God made food. When you look at how intelligent broccoli is, when you actually break it down and look at all the phytochemicals and nutrients, and there's just no lab in the world that could make something more whole and complete than food. But then we have to go about making sure that we get all the minerals because, again, these minerals aren't all conveniently placed in one area. It's almost like the
Right.
Tower of Babylon when you think about it. God said, "Yeah, you guys, you're not allowed to live in one place. I'm not going to put all the nutrients in one place either. So I'm going to scatter it across the world, and you have to sort of like roam around the world and eat everywhere and travel and communicate, and you have to get to learn from each other and from each other's cultures. And I love to see that in expanding my palate. Like you said, variety is one of the most important things. Starting to expand our culinary palate, looking at different cultures and how to cook these different vegetables. And then we can discover that these spices that we're adding to our foods every day are incredibly healing.
Yes.
And these cultures just take it for granted, like India, for example, have amazing, and you look into it and you realize that what they've been eating for 5,000 years is anti-parasitic in their food every day and antibacterial in their food every day. And you think, man, these guys were smart.
Right. The form is very important. People say, but I'm taking magnesium oxide. It's like, well, that's not a good absorbable form. If you're constipated, citrate is better. If you're not constipated, there's glycinate, taurate, malate. They will connect them to different amino acids. And the whole food part is very, very good, but I don't think you should just do the whole food because
Mm-hmm.
you're concentrating in orange, and it does have the cofactors. But the theory now, and I think it's correct, is sometimes you have to give such a huge, huge dose of something because you're not going to absorb much of it. And I did a B12 this morning that was 200,000% the RDA. But of course, the RDA is incredibly and sinfully and unhealthy low. But out of that 200,000%, yeah, I got a lot of energy about it, but I certainly didn't absorb all of it. So, yeah, whole food, the cofactors, you mentioned broccoli. You've got your indole 3 carbinols that converts to diindolol methane, that converts to calcium D-glucarate. It goes on and on and on. But you have to have, I think, the basis of the cruciferous vegetables because they are cofactors. We'll never figure them all out.
Yes, so including cruciferous vegetables in our diet, that's a good myth to bust here. Some people have been told that if you have a thyroid condition, you should avoid the cruciferous vegetables. Oh, don't eat that cabbage. Don't eat that broccoli. It's going to hurt your thyroid. And then I've heard from other people that that was just a myth. That was a complete myth, just like cholesterol. Where are your thoughts? Do you think that someone with any thyroid condition would benefit from eating broccoli and cabbage and bok choy, or are there some people that should avoid them?
I think the stress of worrying about it will kill you quicker than eating them. The cruciferous vegetables have so many good things in them that help take out these plastics and pesticides and phthalates, these estrogen mimicking things. And it's so by dumping these things, it is so anti-cancer. I personally, I would take a chance and eat the heck out of them. You can't eat enough broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts to hurt the thyroid, in my opinion.
Well, and your opinion comes with a great deal of experience, so I definitely appreciate it. Um, is there anything? Let's talk about. You've got a link on your website we should check out. Let's see. There's this quiz. Tell us about this quiz. So when we go to greenwisdomhealth.com, it says a health survey. What happens when we take your health survey?
Well, once upon a time, my health survey was so long that it bored people and scared them off. And so that's a very, very abbreviated health survey, which I think is too short. And then we have a IT computer guru that says, well, if you have them answer certain questions, that can point them to the correct lab. And it does that, but uh, for most people, I think there's only two choices. We have the comprehensive, which is, I think it's 298, which is about 3 grand worth. Uh, and if you can get the comprehensive plus female hormones or the comprehensive plus male hormones. And then the only other real choice, if you have like cardiovascular issues in your family, you can get the super panel for men or the super panel for women, which that can reveal a lot of cardiovascular chinks in your armor, so to speak. So yeah, it'll recommend a lab, but it's usually comprehensive or comprehensive plus hormones. That is so much lab that there's almost no way to not find something that's interfering with your health and well-being.
So it's a really great place to start because there you can get a good glimpse into their health, and then between that and talking to them, you can help to start them on the right path to getting to the root cause.
Yeah, and I try to make it inexpensive enough that most people can do it. If you get the GWH, one, two, three, whatever's appropriate, that includes my consultation fee. And you'll never, as far as I know, never find another doctor that talks to you for so little money. So that's included, no extra fee to, I give you about 30 minutes. And Jen is smart. She's got it where she can send you a link and you can schedule it online, and I can look on my iPhone. She's drugged me into the 21st century with technology, but we try to make it very, very affordable. And then I'll tell you what supplements and why, and and give my reasoning behind that. And people just they get better if they'll put the time into it. And I get those every day. A lady that just before this interview says, well, I was on your stuff and, life happened and I got off your stuff and I definitely went downhill. I just want to get started again. And it's like, well, yes, ma'am. And we went over it and it took me about 20 minutes to tell her what she needed to know. And she says, okay, I'll be right over because she's local. So if the universe is funny, it's a secret. Nobody knows it, but you get out of it what you put into it.
I love that. I had a great conversation, your wife and I, before you were still with a client, and your wife and I were talking for about, I don't know, close to half an hour it must have been. And that's exactly what we were talking about. And that one of the things we talked about is that, what you put into this world is what you're going to get out. From the standpoint of when you do a podcast and you help people and you just pour this information, then those who are meant to be your client are going to come to you. And it's just I
Yes.
find it so funny. You're one of those people. You're a giver. You just give and give and give as a healer, and the universe is going to come and reward you. And then I have these guests once in a while. It doesn't I kind of weed them out before I get them on the show, but once in a
Hmm.
while one gets in and they're stingy with the information. And I kind of like pry and pull and trying to get more actionable steps out of them. And you could just tell they're just there. They're like, they don't want to give up their information because they think like, well, someone should pay me for this. And that's just not the mentality. As a healer, you give, you give, and you give, and you give, and you just be honest and you give, and the universe will reward us. You know what I mean? It's just everything's going to come around if we stop having that mentality of greed and we start having this mentality of love and just give
Yeah.
and know that the universe is going to take care of us. And thank you for taking care of all of us today. I have to point the listeners to your podcast, because if they love learning from you, from this episode, or if they've listened to your last one, episode 117, when you first came on the show, they're going to love checking out your podcast. So when they go to your website, greenwisdomhealth.com, there's a tab at the top that says podcast. It directs them to your Podbean, um, the area in Podbean where you have all of the downloads. Is your podcast also on iTunes? I see it's on Podbean, but is it also on iTunes?
I guess, I don't know much about technology. Some people say they found me on iTunes. Really and truly, I told Janet, thank you for getting me to where I can talk to text and where I can send emails on my iPhone. Thank you for dragging me and being a patient teacher. You drug me into the 20th century. She said, Stephen Lewis, it's the 21st century. So forgive my ignorance there. I think you can get it on iTunes and Podbean, I think.
Right. I'm pretty sure. So, like, your last episode was called "Do You Have an Iodine Deficiency?" And you
Yeah.
talked
Hmm.
all about, seaweed, baked cod, cranberries, shrimp, dried prunes. Those are foods rich in iodine. And
Right.
then you have just here in the show notes that your iodine deficiency symptoms, which you talked about today: depression, difficulty losing weight, dry skin, headaches, lethargy, menstrual problems, recurrent infections. That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit. Is why is it that those with thyroid problems also have hypothyroid, for example, also have immune problems? I'm not talking about autoimmune like Hashimoto's, but just you'd mentioned that those with hypothyroidism also one of the symptoms is like reoccurring infections. Why is that? Is that because of an iodine deficiency, or is there something else?
Well, that it's very possible it's an iodine deficiency because, that's antiseptic in and of itself. But if you get the thyroid working correctly, the thyroid has a great deal to do with the GI tract. And the GI tract is, depending on who you read, it's 60 to 80% of your immune system's your GI tract. So, one thing leads to seven others, and that's why I go down so many rabbit trails with my thoughts. But yeah, I think iodine in and of itself is kind of, a microbial killer.
Oh, very interesting. A lot of people swear by colloidal silver as being antimicrobial. Do you think that's a supplement that people should take every day preventively, or do you believe that supplement is something that we should all sort of have in our house, just like iodine?
I think you should have it in your house, and I do have people that do it every day, which I think is wrong, wrong, wrong. This is my opinion. But, it smothers out microbes, but it also kills your good probiotics too. So, yes, we have it, and yes, it's the stronger stuff. And I don't think you should do it every day. I think you should save it for when your immune system really needs some help.
Very cool. Is there anything else that you would like to say to those listeners who have thyroid issues to wrap up today's interview?
Yeah, I'd love to say this, and I'm not sure you think it's going to be related, but I think if a person's feeling sad, they need to do something to brighten someone else's day. I think if people don't feel appreciated, they need to write thank you notes. I think if they feel they don't have enough money, they need to buy somebody's lunch without them finding out. I think you need to give what you want the universe to give back to you. Even though if you're tired and you have hypothyroidism, you have fibromyalgia, it's harder to do those things, but it can give you such incredible joy and energy to do that. And one example, I hope you please take this in a proper context, but, my drug dealer, which is my Girl Scout cookie lady, sweet little girl, been buying cookies from her forever. She came in and I was super, super busy, and I threw a pretty large amount of money at her, and I said, here, I like this and this and this and this and this. Her parents says, you're her best hookup, so to speak. It's like a drug deal going down. I said, yeah, but I don't eat them. I give them to the lady at the bank. I give them to the people that change my oil. I give them to the lady at the dry cleaners. And it's not that, those cookies are healthy or anything like that, but it brings so much joy to these people to know that their mundane job is actually appreciated. So, folks, if you feel sick, go out and make somebody else better. Uplift their life in some small manner. And I think that's the first and most important step in getting well, no matter what the issue is.
That was so well said. And you know, the Girl Scout cookies have a gluten-free cookie now.
Yeah, it tastes terrible, but I did buy some. Yes, I
You should
did.
write them a letter. Make a better tasting gluten-free cookie. That is so funny, but it's so true. It's so true what you just said. If we're feeling depressed, go cheer someone else up. Go volunteer. Go help someone else. It creates the most amazing the high ever. We learned this. My husband and I learned this from the guy that wrote the book Conversations with God. We went to one of his workshops, and he said, carry around walking money. So if dollar bills or $5 bills, for him it's like he's a millionaire, so he has like $20 bills, and he just goes, that money, put it in your pocket, knowing that you're going to give that money away. And when you find someone who needs it, don't ask yourself, oh, is this person going to use it for drugs or alcohol? Just say, you know what, this person needs it more than me, and give them that dollar, that $5 or whatever. And for the rest of the day, you feel so high. Or like, pay for if you're in Starbucks line, pay for the person behind you. My husband and I have paid for someone's lunch, in a restaurant, and didn't tell them. We ran out of the restaurant. We paid for ours and then paid for someone beside us, and then ran
Hmm.
out of the restaurant giggling and laughing and just, feeling so high. It's like there's no street drug that'll make you feel that good, knowing that you paid it forward. And then like you said, go to those people that you care about, like your bank teller, that does make a difference in your day, like the people that pump the gasoline in your car, if you're in a state like Oregon that pumps your gas, but people that don't feel that their job is necessarily appreciated, or your garbage man, or your mailman or mailwoman. Leave them a note and thank them, and let them know that they're appreciated, and that'll make brighten their life, but it brightens yours even more. Isn't that how cool how that works? The more we're loving, the more we just feel filled with joy. And then that spills over, like you said, to there's physiological benefits as well.
Yeah, I think that's the best place to start. Spirit really means the nature of. And so if you want a better spirit, you give and you change your nature into more positive and more uplifting. And I love doing that. I think maybe it's selfish that I do it because it makes me feel good, but I try to do a lot of it anonymously if I can. Buy the Starbucks behind you, or buy a lunch and not tell them who it is. Man, you want to get a real big kick. Get behind somebody in the grocery store, like a sweet little old lady or a single mom, and buy their groceries.
Oh, right. Oh, that's beautiful. Especially if you can tell that maybe, especially when someone, I've done that before, when someone puts something back because
Right.
they realize they're over budget. I mean, it makes you feel so good inside to know that you could help them. And then you got to gauge the situation, make sure you're not like, hurting their feelings. Cause some people
Yeah.
they take it as an insult, but man, when they appreciate it, and then you don't know, like they could be out of gas money. Like that could have been their groceries for the next week, or they're told, you just don't know what their situation is. And just by you paying for that item or paying for their groceries could mean all the world for a whole week for them.
Yeah.
And maybe for you, it meant not going out, one less dinner that you ate out, right? But for them, it meant the whole world, and it affected their whole family.
You're so, I mean, you must be my little sister or something. So if you think it's going to hurt their feelings, you have a folded up $20 bill or $50 bill or $100 bill, and you think it's going to hurt their feelings, and they have to put something back. You tap them on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, that's on the floor. It must be yours." And you just threw it on the
Oh,
floor before you do that.
oh, I think you dropped this.
Yep.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for coming today. And you've brought such a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and I just really appreciate you. You're welcome back on the show anytime, because we could talk about anything. Really?
I usually do anything and everything. You're an absolutely incredible host. You make it so easy. It's fun, and I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Well, keep doing what you're doing. Keep being a wonderful light and a healer to this world. And I can't wait to hear how it goes with your RV road trips. That just sounds like a hoot. Sounds like my dream come true. I'd love to travel. That's in fact we're gonna. My husband and I are planning on doing that when our son is a bit older. We want to travel and homeschool him in a camper van, like a Vanagon camper van. We just think that would be really, really neat. Because why would you study geography from a textbook? Let's go, let's go see it for ourselves.
And it's a difference between the map and the real thing. So, we had visions of Robin Williams or Chevy Chase, their RV movies, but we made it through the first, little over a week. So I think we're going to make a habit of it, and we can still practice.
Nice, very cool. Well, it sounds like you're living the dream. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. Definitely get listeners check out your podcast, Green Wisdom Health Podcast, and I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you. Anytime. I'm ready.
Hello, true health seeker. Have you ever thought about becoming a health coach? Do you love learning about nutrition and how we can shift our lifestyle and our diet so that we can gain optimal health and happiness and longevity? Do you love helping your friends and family to solve their health problems and to figure out what they can do to eat healthier? Are you interested in becoming someone who can grow their own business, support people in their success? Do you love helping people? You might be the perfect candidate to become a health coach. I highly recommend checking out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I just spent the last year in their health coaching certification program, and it really blew me away. It was so amazing. I learned over 100 dietary theories. I learned all about nutrition, but from a standpoint of how we can help people to shift their life and shift their lifestyle to gain true holistic health. I definitely recommend you check them out. You can Google Institute for Integrative Nutrition or IIN and give them a call, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/coach and you can receive a free module of their training to check it out and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Be sure to mention my name, Ashley James, and the Learn True Health podcast, because I made a deal with them that they will give you the best price possible. I highly recommend checking it out. It really changed my life to be in their program, and I'm such a big advocate that I wanted to spread this information. We need more health coaches. In fact, health coaching is the largest growing career right now in the health field. So many health coaches are getting in and helping people because you can work in chiropractic offices, doctors' offices, you can work in hospitals, you can work online through Skype and help people around the world. You can become an author, you can go into the school system and help your local schools shift their programs to help children be healthier. You can go into senior centers and help them to shift their diet and lifestyle to best support them in their success and their health goals. There's so many different available options for you when you become a certified health coach. So check out IIN, check out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, mention my name, get the best deal. Give them a call and they'll give you lots of free information and help you to see if this is the right move for you. Classes are starting soon. The next round of classes are starting at the end of the month. So you're going to want to call them now and check it out. And if you know anyone in your life who would be an amazing coach, please tell them about it. Being a health coach is so rewarding and you get to help so many people.